There are 5 generations in the workplace with so many differences in backgrounds and opinions. It is inevitable that there will be clash between the generations. What if this happens to you? In this week's episode of The Happy Leader, you're going to hear a story about a generational clash, what happened, and how you can handle it if you find yourself in a battle with somebody of a different generation so that it doesn't debunk your progress. Welcome to The Happy Leader. I'm Amy Sanchez, executive coach to some of the most innovative leaders and teams in Silicon Valley. I'll share stories and tips to help you navigate the most common leadership challenges so you can amplify what matters most: happiness. Today's recording is a little different than the ones I've done in the past because I am fresh off a LinkedIn exchange that really highlights what can happen when different generations clash. Here's what happened. I was fresh off delivering management training to a large and growing organization in the Bay Area. And I posted a video about the 5 generations in the workforce and the different management style that you can take to really flex to the different needs in the workforce. I had an elderly man who'd been in the workforce for quite some time, well-educated, had been a senior leader at top pharma companies, including Johnson & Johnson, Novartis, and Roche. And I knew this because he highlighted it in his LinkedIn post. Tell me that there was no such thing as flexing your management style to the 5 different generations. Here's what he said. Frankly, all the corporations that I worked for are focused on the work, getting things done and achieving objectives. They are flexible to a limited extent on individual needs as long as the corporate objectives are not compromised. He went on to say, management is not focused on resonating with the workforce beyond making sure we are all working towards the same business objectives and the environment is respectful and inclusive. In other words, if you don't like the management style, you can leave. There's usually no shortage of people to replace you. This expendable management style was really highlighted from him in terms of what worked best when he was in the workforce. He also went on to criticize me as I shared with him some of the new thinking around the 5 generations in the workforce and asked how he flexed his style to meet those. He went in and started to attack me and tell me that I needed to go back to the workforce and get more experience. At first, I was really surprised because here we are on this really public platform, LinkedIn, and he is openly criticizing me, which seems really unprofessional. And then I started to get angry because I remembered all the times when I was in meetings as a junior person, when I saw this happen live in meetings and through collaborations, when a more junior person had a viewpoint that might have been the right one, but certainly was different than what the senior leader had shared. And the senior leader not only disagreed with the more junior person, but started to criticize them and their experience and understanding. This is a huge difference in management style. The older generation of get in line, do as I say, or there's the door, versus the younger generation who has new and innovative ideas that, frankly, we need to advance the workforce in such a changing climate. Now, there is value to both, and this is not about criticizing one generation versus another. The point I would like to make, though, is collaboration is key. No matter what your management style is, you need to find a way to help foster conversations and environments that encourage fresh thinking, encourage creativity, and honor the needs of the different people in the workforce. However, you and I both know that this doesn't always happen. And when the worst styles start to come out and clash with each other, this is when the corporate space moves from being cohesive to entirely stuck in conflict. And I've seen this with a number of corporations that I've worked with and helped over the years. I've also personally been on the receiving end of this style, where if you didn't get in line and you weren't as productive as possible, that the company decides to let you go. And you may not all know this about me, but here's a little story about why I decided to become a coach in the first place. I was working for a med device company, and I had been with them for about 3 years, rapidly growing company. I was traveling all the time. I had a team of direct reports. I was managing a number of really challenging strategic initiatives, and we were going a million miles a minute. At the time I was remote, I remember I announced I was pregnant. I told my boss. And it wasn't shortly after that we had a conversation, and he said, Amy, it's going to be really hard for you to focus on work when you've got that baby at home. After that, it shouldn't have been a surprise to me when I received the phone call. You have two options. You can quit voluntarily, or you can move and pay out of pocket. They were offering me a little bit of money for the move, but it was nothing compared to how much it would have cost me to actually sell my house and move to the corporate headquarters. I was crushed, and I was surprised that what they were doing was actually legal. Now, in the end, I ended up leaving and put a lot of thought into how to respond to that episode in my life. And ultimately, it led me to go through coaching accreditation and be on the other side of supporting people who were put into those awkward and compromising situations. And I have seen so many of these play out, not only for women who have to step outside of the organization to have children, but also minorities. And by minority, I don't just mean the way you look. I mean the way that you think, the way that you act, the way that you look. I've seen so many instances of corporations being threatened by a new and different person in the organization. And ultimately, this person was weeded out because it was just too different. If you are listening to this and you feel different than the management style that is predominant in your organization, here's what I'll say. You really have two options at this point. Number one, look for a really good support system, because it is not easy to feel like you are alone on your own little island in the company. You can either decide to stick it out and try to usher in incremental change. Now, change isn't going to happen overnight. The louder you are and the more critical you are, the more people are just going to shut you out and not listen to you. So it's going to take time as you approach the change in your organization. Make sure that you focus on solutions instead of just harping on problems that will help people better see the future. If in the end you decide this is just such an energy suck for me, I don't ever feel like I'm going to change things here, and I just can't continue to invest energy into something that's never going to change and never going to work for me, then it's entirely okay to leave. There are so many options in today's workforce, and I don't think anybody would criticize you for choosing your mental health over staying in a toxic situation. Bottom line is, we are 5 generations in the workforce. The most important thing as we think about working with each other is respecting each other's differences and trying to find the best of our strengths. If you attack the younger generation like I was attacked on LinkedIn today, nobody's ever going to get any work done. So for me, I was attacked by this older gentleman. It doesn't bother me much because he doesn't impact my promotion or my success. However, if he had attacked me in the workplace and he was a senior leader in my organization, I can imagine that I would go home at night and somehow blame myself, which I've seen time and time and time again. Don't let that happen to you. Don't blame yourself if you are being picked on by a generation in the workforce that is more senior than you, that has a different style. Don't lose your confidence. Do continue to lean into respect, collaboration, and try to find the way to move the needle towards change, because the only certainty as we're navigating 5 generations in the workforce is that change is going to continue to come. If you have your own story of a time where you have felt shut down by senior leadership, or your generational preferences have really been criticized, reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn. I want to hear your story. Amy Sanchez, executive coach. I want to hear more about what's going on out there. I know my story. I know my friends' stories where there's been overt sexism and racism and nothing has happened to change it, except they were given a goodbye package, even though they were incredibly successful and well-educated people. But I'd like to hear more. I believe that together we can usher in this change and really help the generations work together until we start to see more retirement come about, which is already happening. So look forward to hearing from you, and remember to stay happy out there. Thanks for listening to The Happy Leader. If you would like more information about me, Amy Sanchez, and our executive coaching and team leadership services at Swim Against the Current, visit swim-against.com. And if you liked this podcast, help others who could use the support find it by giving us a rating. Until next time, life is short. Stay happy.